Welcome to Civics, a program on Arlington Independent Media. I'm Michael Shea, the host of this episode of Civics. As we like to say on this program, we think civic activism is a good thing. A noisy democracy is a healthy democracy. We hope you are both informed by this program and inspired to do what you can to make your community a better place to live. We're joined by a longtime Arlington County resident who has spent many years working hard to make his community more inclusive. Charlie Rinker, welcome to Civics.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, now Charlie, what do you think of as the first time that you felt engaged in your community in sort of an active civic activism?
Well, it probably goes back beyond or before coming to Arlington. I was very involved in, I guess, my junior and senior year at first in college in civil rights stuff. We tried to integrate Randolph-Macon College in Ashland, Virginia, and I was involved in several other civil rights efforts, and then a little bit later on the anti-Vietnam War stuff.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, you've been going at this for a long time, what do you think has motivated you to stay engaged and active for so long?
Well, I think you know, you have to be concerned about people and think about people, and I've kind of always, you know, had that piece of me. And at the same time, I think you have to be interested in social and economic justice. That's kind of what has motivated me, I guess, throughout, and even in terms of what I'm doing now and what I've done in Arlington.
Now, I thought about, you've gotten a number of what I guess in a sense are Lifetime Achievement Awards. I mean, you've gotten so many, you must feel like a cat with 9 lives. But I'm not going to read them all, but let's go back to 1970s. You were one of the co-founders of what is now AHC, what was then called Arlington
Housing Corporation.
What problem were you trying to address?
Well, at that point, in terms of Arlington and really around the country, there was very little emphasis on affordable housing and affordable housing as an issue. And at that particular time, Joe Fisher had just got a law passed that provided Arlington for the first time with some community block grant funds from HUD. And so a group of us kind of came together and had a Saturday retreat, really, and talked about what we should be doing, how we could use that money, you know, what would be the best way to use it. And out of that whole effort, it wasn't just from that Saturday, but out of that whole effort came the creation of the Arlington Housing Corporation.
And so what experience or professional experience did you bring to that, and some of the other people? What was sort of needed to make that work?
Well, a lot of people, you know, kind of came together. It wasn't me, you know, by myself or even as a leader at that point. There were a number of people that came together, and people were at least sensitive to some of the housing issues in the county, and realized that not much was being done to help poor people, to help even moderate income people. So I think the initial you know, impetus was really people realizing that something needed to be done and not knowing exactly what to do, but we all kind of came together and formed some programs to make some things happen.
Now, it's still around, and it's expanded its operations a great deal.
Yeah.
But what was there a moment early on where you maybe felt like, okay, we've made it, we've built something that's going to last, or is that hard to say?
That's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we started out with a part-time staff person, had one program, and then as we got additional monies in later years, we added to that program, and you know, it has grown tremendously at this point, and has been very impressive, I think, in terms of. I was on the board for 10 years of that early process, and president a couple of years, but again, it took a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds to make it work. And good staff. We had some really committed staff people.
And obviously some of you had real estate or developer background.
Yes.
So that was definitely important.
Right.
To have that in there. Okay, so moving on into the 1970s. I think you ran for county board in Arlington County.
I did in 1979.
What motivated you to put your name forward and run as a candidate?
Well, I think once you get involved in a community, we'd purchased a home in 1969 in Arlington, and I think we progressively, my wife and I progressively got more involved as we went, and I don't know, I think you move from one thing to another if you think you can make a difference. And a few people came to me and said, Charlie, why don't you run for the county board? And I thought it over a little bit, and with a little push, decided it was maybe a good idea. Or at least, another way I could, be helpful in terms of the community that and have a little bit more power to get some of my ideas and other people, like that around.
So what happened? What was the outcome of the election?
Well, I lost the election. Mary Margaret Whipple and I ran. It was a year that two of us, two county board members, ran. We ran against Walter Franklin and Dorothy Grodos. They were the incumbents. We lost, but it was a close race. It was actually a fun campaign. A lot of people that worked in the campaign say it was one of the most fun campaigns that they, had been involved in. And we talked about affordable housing. I guess the big issue that year was funding of Metro. So that was talked about quite a bit.
Right, you anticipated my next question, because I always ask someone who runs for office, did you have fun? And it sounds like you had fun, so that's a good thing. Yeah. Well, did you learn a lot about the process? Because obviously you've been an activist ever since, so it didn't turn you off the system or the process.
Right.
What did you learn a lot about the process?
Well, before I ran for county board, I was active in the Arlington Democratic Committee and Party, and I had done precinct operations and work in the party, and so I knew a number of things about campaigning before that, but it's a little bit different when you look at it from the perspective of the candidate. And a lot of people just pulled together, and that's what made it a fun campaign, and so forth.
Okay, so your main issue has been housing. If you had to look back, what would you describe as maybe the highlight successes? What's been the things you feel have worked the best?
Well, over the years, there have been a number of different kinds of things that I'd put in that category. One of the things we did, I guess in the early 90s, was to pull together a group of affordable housing people to come up with some things that we need to do in terms of inclusive zoning. And we got the county board to pass a zoning ordinance that required developers coming in to put 10% of their units in as affordable housing. That got, there was a court case against that by one of the developers. Then the county formed a roundtable, and we came up with some legislation that we took to the state. The state, accepted or voted on, allowed us to do inclusive zoning, and reduced from 10% to 5%. But nevertheless, it was one of the things that was very significant, I think. The other thing, I guess, we did a couple different things in terms of specific projects. The Lee Gardens project I guess that was in the 80s sometime, AHC ended up buying roughly a half of that project, 362 units, and that was turned into affordable housing. later on, most recently, we've done 140 units in the Buckingham Village 3, and that's still in process, but 140 units, 92 of which were rental tax credit project, and the other 48 we're hoping to do a home ownership, affordable home ownership project. That came along about at the time when the mortgage crisis occurred, so it's kind of on hold, and we're not sure where we're going with that. But I think that project at least was a success. Right. And there have been some other projects that that we worked on over the years that were successful.
Okay, and what would you feel like maybe has been a shortfall? What's something that didn't work?
Well, I think the basic shortfall, that we around 1999 and 2000, there was a developer, the Avalon Bay Corporation, that came into Arlington, and they bought the Honor Valley apartments, which was 720 units, if I remember rightly. It was very affordable housing. Some of it, and a good portion of it did need to be renovated, but their plan was to just renovate it and gentrify it, and kick all the poor people and the low and moderate income people out. And that's in effect what happened. There were a group of us again that came together, a coalition. We called it the Coalition Save Honor Valley Coalition. And we worked very hard with trying to get the developer to work with us. When we couldn't get that done, we tried to get the county to really force the developer to work, but they were not that engaged at that point in affordable housing, and experienced, I think. And all 720 units were lost and people were displaced, so that was a real shortfall. But out of that effort came a group, we organized a group called Bravo, Buyers and Renters Arlington Voice, because we felt like, wow, we can't wait until a developer comes in and then try to fight a displacement. We had to organize tenants, work with tenants before that.
One common theme, I think, it seems to be the start of making progress or affecting change, is getting, as you say, a lot of people, you called a roundtable with regard to the inclusionary zoning ordinance, but even earlier with the founding of AHC, where it was just a group of people getting together and talking about how to solve a problem. This seems to be the key starting point for any effort in this area.
Yeah, I think that's true. It always takes a number of people, and it can be a small group of people. But I think generally everything I've been involved in has been, has grown out of a group of us that were, I'd say, like-minded, but that doesn't mean we all agreed exactly on what needed to be done. But when we started it, and we worked things through and so forth, we created, different organizations. A-Home, Arlington Home Ownership Made Easier, kind of grew out of that and grew out of some of the work of a couple people on the Housing Commission at that point.
Now, AHC is a nonprofit developer that offers residential services to a lot of tenants. A-Home is, tell us more about A-Home.
Okay, A-Home is Arlington Home Ownership Made Easier, and it's an effort to really counsel people and work with people and provide the education that they need to purchase a home in the first place. And again, it's low and moderate income people. And over the years, the A-Home was created, I think, in about 1990, 1989. And over the years, we've had a lot of people go through classes. We were also partly instrumental, along with, again, other people who pushed it and worked on it, with creating the MIPAP program, Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program, which is a soft second trust program that helped people that were, again, low income or moderate income and couldn't afford the higher prices in Arlington to get a soft second trust in addition to their first trust and be able to afford a home. So we've done that. Now recently, or more recently, A-Home has been very involved in the foreclosure prevention process and so forth. Now we're kind of beginning to move back to home ownership more, because foreclosure, not that it's over, but it's you know, the numbers of people coming to us aren't nearly as high as they were 3 years ago.
And so, and the home ownership skills and all, it has a lot to do with financial literacy and understanding mortgages and debt and all those sort of things. Here's what I think is really interesting. They got started, A-Home was started about 20 years ago? Been around for about 20 years now? Right.
Yeah.
Which is more than a decade before the subprime crisis. So the rest of the country, it seems like, catches on that we need to up financial literacy. We need to get people to understand this better. But A-Home had been doing it for many years before that became sort of a buzzword or a hot topic.
Well, yeah, there were other places. D.C. had a program similar to the MyPAP program called the Home Purchase Assistance Program. They'd been doing it since around 1980. So, I mean, there were places in California that were doing a MyPAP type program. So it had been. I mean, it wasn't just Arlington that was doing it, although in a lot of ways Arlington has been a leader in some areas of affordable housing.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the coalitions, broad coalitions in the community that you've been involved with. How do they sort of come together? So working with different groups all on a campaign or a project.
Well, obviously, when you're doing the first few or whatever, you know, you meet a lot of people, bring a lot of people together and so forth. Later on, you there's kind of a group of people you know are concerned about this issue, and you can kind of tap them, and then we together can tap others. But we went to the churches, for example. There's a Arlington Interfaith Council. They have there are 48 church members in that group, and several of them, not all of the churches, but 8 or 10 of the churches were very active in, you know, most of the things that we've done, particularly when there was displacement potential from renovation and redevelopment. And, you know, we brought, there were a lot of non-church people who were concerned about issues of housing. At first, you know, I think most people kind of migrated around the moral issue of people not being displaced, and now affordable housing, people understand that there are environmental issues related to that. There's diversity issues. If we want a diverse community economically and culturally, which Arlington prides itself in, that's a real plus to have, and that's a real, you know, part of the motivation. So over the years, different people have come together to work for affordable housing, some for different reasons, but generally for the same same overall reason.
Right. Let me ask you this. As you go around Arlington County, you meet people, and not just people that you're already working with in affordable housing, do you find yourself having a conversation where someone says, oh, what do you do? And you mention, well, affordable housing. I'm an advocate. Do you find frequently having a conversation where they go, well, what is that? And you kind of try to explain some of the concepts? Because I think that's what struck me as a producer here at AIM and going to these events. I've struck a number of times when I try to tell people about it. They go, well, what is that?
Yeah.
You know? And you have to kind of explain it.
Oh,
but I guess,
I think over the years that's very true. Back in the 80s and early 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of understanding in the general population in Arlington of what affordable housing, you know, was. So there was a lot of definitions, what area median income are you trying to reach, all of those kinds of questions. Now I think there's more of a understanding, although I don't think, you know, there's the understanding that we really need yet from the community, and particularly from the business community. I mean, a lot of businesses, hospitals, restaurants, hotels, etc., can't really find workers that live in Arlington or can afford to live in Arlington. So it's really important, I think, for them to think through what they can do to help support, you know, affordable housing. So the population thinking about it has grown, although we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, sure. Okay, what do you think we should be doing to get more people involved in community affairs, in activism? Do you have any ideas about ways we can, as a community, get even more people engaged?
Well, the most important thing in terms of civic engagement is getting a lot of people involved and hearing a lot of voices. And one of the areas, or one of the sets of voices that we don't hear very strongly in Arlington is tenants. Mm-hmm. Tenants are about 66% of the population, but if you look around at commissions, who sits on them, if you look around at civic associations, you'll find very few tenants that are really involved. So one of the things that Bravo, Buyers and Renters Arlington Voice, has tried to do is to get tenants more engaged, going to public comment meetings or comment periods with the county board. We're trying now to develop some listservs within buildings. We've tried to organize some tenant associations within buildings. That's very difficult. People don't tend to want to have another organization. They're so busy, and they don't see the need of it until there's a crisis. And by the time there's a crisis, it's almost too late. So it's difficult, but I think people do, you know, begin to engage. One of the things we're trying to do in Bravo is work with different low and moderate income and actually higher income tenants to do community gardens on site. And we've gotten some cooperation from landlords on that, and I think that's something that might bring people together. And once people get to know one another in their communities and in their apartment buildings, then when another issue comes forward, they're more willing and able to come together and speak on it and develop positions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because it's almost as if you're creating a space for them to find a way to talk about their problems.
Exactly.
And talk about solutions. You're creating that round table, and it's a community garden in this case, but it's functioning like that round table where you're coming together and coming up with solutions.
Right.
So, do you find that when you're engaging people this way and getting them to speak, say at a county board meeting, do you find it's almost transformative? It's almost they suddenly realize the power they have in their community?
Oh yeah. That happens all the time, and probably has happened to most all of us in terms of sometimes we're surprised at how powerful we are with some of the ideas that we put forward, and tenants feel that way too, just like anybody else does, if they come together and get the county board to listen.
Right.
Yeah. Or the state, we've done some things with the state, whoever the governing body is.
Right. Yeah, I think it is incredibly transformative at times, and I think people can be changed that way. I have to admit, though, I think in some ways my son might have been born that way, because from an early age, whenever an issue comes up, he talks about wanting to go down and speak before the county board on it. And I'm talking about when he's in preschool.
That's
so he
good.
was born with the natural knack to want to go and speak, and we've had to kind of restrain him sometimes.
Well, you might let him go.
I think we should. We will. We encourage him. But now he's in middle school, so
okay.
He almost doesn't have time for anything else besides middle school.
Right.
They keep, in Arlington particularly, they keep the students pretty busy.
Pretty busy, right. But
Okay.
I think you can't start too early, I guess is what I'm saying.
I agree.
In terms of,
I mean, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. It's almost like it's like a healthy and eating habit. You want to get a good habit early in life, and then it'll last you your life long, as it has with you, I think.
Yeah, although I wasn't involved that early. But
Early enough, though.
yeah.
Okay, so what do you see as next? What's next for Charlie Rinker in activism?
Well, I don't know. I'll continue to work on affordable housing. There's still a lot of things we need to do in terms of affordable housing in the county and in the region. I mean, part of it is a regional issue as well as a local issue. In fact, you can't really solve it just on a locality basis. But I think one of the things that we need to think about, and at least that I've been thinking about, haven't really talked to very many people about this, but I think we need to start thinking about the income side of the equation, and the fact that so many people in Arlington make $7, $8 an hour, don't even make a living wage of $12 or $13 an hour, and it makes it very difficult for those people to get along and to not be displaced when there's gentrification and when there's redevelopment. I mean, one of Arlington's problems is it's been such a successful community.
Right.
So, and that has its downside.
Right.
So
Right. That's what people say. The problem of housing affordability is a problem of prosperity.
Yes.
Because it
Yes,
pushes
it
people
is.
out.
Right.
But those are the people that you still need to live and work here.
Well, just in the last, I don't know, 2 weeks in the Washington Post, we learned, assuming they're correct in terms of their reports, that we're the third. Arlington County is the third most richest county in the country, and at the same time, and this happened about 3 or 4 days after they had that story. At the same time, we were 10 years ago 5.9% of the population in poverty. We're now 7.7%. That's a 30% increase over that 10-year period. So as we become richer, on the one hand, we've also become poor, and it's very difficult for people, at the poor end of that, to live in the county and remain in the county.
Well, speaking as an Arlington County resident, I just want to say that I feel better that someone like you is engaged on that issue. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I also want to thank our volunteer crew here at Arlington Independent Media. Most of all, I want to thank Charlie Rinker for working so hard to make his community a better place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you.